BYU goes on the road to Cincinnati in what should be their last tough regular season test. It is their last tough regular season test. You could obviously lose to UCF next weekend because crazy things happen in college football, but no one is classifying that as a tough test to end the season. And they survived their last tough test. They won 26-14 in what is very much a BYU game. Nothing about the yardage indicates that they won this game. Nothing like that, but they force a key turnover on Cyrus Allen. He fumbles in the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
Cincinnati's kicker can't buy a field goal, and you mentioned he'd been good all season, but you play BYU, crazy things happen. I was going to say Mormon magic, but it's LDS magic. Pulls through, and like I said, they win 26-14. Another good game from them, and BYU just couldn't execute in key moments. Thoughts on this game?
Yeah, biggest one is right off the bat, what other stat do you need? I think there's two of them, and you could tell me these two stats. I think it's over, and you could tell a lot more stats, but I guess these would be your padlock stats. Cincinnati kicker is over 3. I think it's over. LJ Martin has 266 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Domination.
I think it's domination. I think it's all BYU. That being said, BYU didn't dominate. They were very much in this game with Cincinnati the whole way, but I'd argue that they controlled it really, really well. Kicker was 23 for 24 in the year coming into the game. He's 0 for 3. And I know I've made this joke before on the show, and I've actually gotten praise for it outside of the show, so I'm going to make it again. Sometimes the Lord and his will has different plans for you. And you can be kicking it well all year, and then when it's the biggest moment of your life, biggest game of your season at that point, not Goodwill version of the Walmart version of College Game Day is there with Big Noon Kickoff and Dave Portnoy, and you're hosting BYU. It's a huge ranked matchup against the 11th team in the country. You're 23 for 24, and you go 0 for 3 that day. Sometimes it's just the Lord has a different plan for you. Sometimes the girl says no to you, and you have to move on. Sometimes you fail the test you thought you were prepared for, and you have to move on. And that is, unfortunately, the case for Cincinnati and his kicker. You can't feel bad for him, but it's not his will. It's God's will, and God had a different plan for him that night.
I feel like our BYU segments are slowly becoming more spiritual than our other segments.
As they should, because this felt that way. BYU had a simple game plan. LJ Martin had 35 touches, 266 yards, 2 touchdowns. Their best receiver, Chase Roberts, left the game at halftime. Kalani Sitake said he wasn't feeling right and that he felt he would hurt the team if he kept playing, and so he doesn't come out and play in the second half. He comes out in street clothes, and without Chase Roberts, they were fine. They leaned on LJ Martin. LJ just refused to give up. There were a lot of times it looked like he was hurt. He continued to get big yardage. He got right up off the turf there in Cincinnati, and they got right back in the huddle and took the handoff again. Sorsby, I got to give a ton of credit.
Best game of the season?
I don't think so because they didn't win, and I think quarterback wins is a part of that. But for him to respond the way he did with that turnover, which was a terrible pick, he was really, really good. 300 yards, 38 on the ground, 2 touchdowns. My biggest one, and I have 2 takeaways for each of the 2 teams. For Cincinnati, I feel like you have to have almost frustration with the game plan. They have 2 really, really good players in Evan Pryor and Caleb Goody. Evan Pryor had just 10 touches for 84 yards. That's your running back. LJ Martin, on the other hand, had 35 for 266. Something like that cannot happen. And then the other one, Caleb Goody, who returns for this game, their very, very talented receiver, has just 4 catches for 37 yards. Chase Roberts doesn't play in the second half, but Parker Kingston got his touches. He had 7 for 39. Very similar in the yardage, I get it, but he had 7 touches. He was involved in this game. He also had a carry on the ground. Why aren't you getting it to your playmakers against an elite defense? You can argue maybe the elite defense takes it away, but everyone knows when you watch the Chiefs that Mahomes is going to try to get the ball to Travis Kelce. Doesn't matter. He's going to get the ball to Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
Cincinnati legend, Travis Kelce. I feel like you have to have some frustration there with the game plan for Cincinnati. And on the other hand, for BYU, for me, fraud you is being said in the chat from various members in the chat. And I feel like a lot of people are going to say that. But their resiliency and knowing how to control a football game really pops on screen. It really shows for me. There's some bias to that, maybe. But they never trailed on the road.
Yeah.
And at that point, the biggest game in their season, when Cincinnati tied the game, they drove the field. They took the lead back with a field goal. When Cincinnati cut the lead to 6 in the fourth and the crowd's getting hype, they go 9 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. Put them out of the game immediately. That is what great teams do. It was something I talked about in the pregame. They are really incredible on the road for the talent profile that they have. They're now 10-2 the last 2 years with their only losses to Arizona State and Texas Tech. Arizona State last year, playoff team. Texas Tech this year, a playoff team. This team just doesn't lose. It may not look pretty, but no game on the road is ever looking amazing unless the team just gives up, a la LSU, when Bama goes there, A&M goes there. So I think you have to give a ton of credit to BYU because given the talent profile that they had, missing their best receiver, they had one game plan in mind, and it worked. And they showed a ton of control over that football game, controlling the time of possession a ton because of that.
Yeah. I think it's very fair. I will say about the Cincinnati play calling, I do think it is I do think it is partially on play calling, but because I mean it's like your job to get your best guys open and help your guys move the ball down the field, but also in a sense this has been their issue in every big game they've played, even like the Utah game of, oh man, their playmakers look really good against lesser competition, and then they can't show up in the bigger games. So I do, at some point, it's like I do have to wonder, are the really good players really actually not like elite players? How much of it is on the game plan and how much of it is on them? Because, I mean, they just really haven't showed up in their bigger games offensively. I do think Sorsby was great. He hit 300 passing yards, and the biggest critique of him has been when the run game isn't going and they can't lean on the run game, he kind of crumbles and isn't accurate enough, and that wasn't the case last night. It didn't matter because they lost.
Yeah, he'd been averaging, it was either 16 or 17 completions per game this year.
Yeah.
He's 25 in this game.
Mm-hmm.
When the run game was not working against this touted BYU front, they were able to lean on him through the air, and he was really, really good outside of the pick, which was terrible. I laid out several keys for this game, and for our Cougars, I'd still kind of argue that they're my Cougars for the most part.
All right, cool.
They are yours more than mine. I do still think is still apt. Like it does fit. Either works. I'm not gonna maybe Sanders will take offense to but I'll allow either.
That's fine.
Yeah, I don't know why you're trying to claim sole ownership of the BYU Cougars.
Because y'all think Texas Tech is going to beat BYU.
You don't think Texas Tech is going to beat BYU in the championship game?
If they play again, I will be picking BYU.
Okay. Enjoy.
They've got to get there, though. Texas Tech still has to get there, too.
Also true.
Sorsby had only been sacked 3 times on the year. He was just sacked once in the game. You would think advantage BYU. Or not advantage BYU. Advantage Cincinnati.
Yeah.
He's only sacked once. BYU had 4 sacks against Josh Hoover last week. But Sorsby was pressured 21 times. That's the second most of the season. Even more alarming, he had only been pressured a double-digit amount of times twice this season prior to this game, at Kansas and at Utah. And again, he was pressured 21 times from that BYU front. BYU really got after him, and although they weren't able to bring him down to the ground, they pressured him all night, forced him into his terrible pick. BYU ran for 265 on the road. That was something we talked about in the breakdown of this game. Cincinnati was 90th in the country in rushing yards allowed per game, and BYU was top 35. BYU dominated. And then another one was Cincinnati, their fast starts. They had been averaging 9.3 first quarter points per game this year. 0. first quarter points. They were driving late in the first and then had the turnover on downs where they fumbled the football to start the second. But still, 0 first quarter points at home in your biggest game of the season for the Bearcats. Cincinnati, kind of a bad luck stat, avoided the penalties. They were, I think I compared them, to Mississippi State in terms of how many penalty yardage they have. They were averaging 70 per game. They have just 40 that night, so an advantage towards them, but a bad luck stat at the end of it. I really enjoyed watching this because the other games going on were not great, especially one that we'll break down here in a little bit. But it was really fun having it's something I love about college football. It's really fun having other like teams that you root for and that you really care about. And for me, for the most part, I have a few teams that I will cheer for every year. But throughout the course of the year, I'll end up picking a team and I'll be like, I really fall in love with them. Last year was Penn State. I really fell in love with Penn State. This year it's BYU. It's so fun getting to watch that as a State fan. It's just really refreshing.
Yeah.
It's really refreshing to look. You could call it bandwagoning if you want because last year I picked Penn State and this year I'm picking BYU. But backing them and them following through on that more often than Mississippi State does, of course, is really, really fun. But then also just getting to fall in love with new characters like Bear Bachmeier. Parker Kingston is a freaking dog. Chase Roberts is going to be great. LJ that was his best game of the year, inarguably. That's something I really, really enjoy about college football because I don't think you get that really from the NFL. The only time you get that, I think, is when you cheer for that team because some of the guys on that team went to your college.
Yeah.
Like I cheer for the Cowboys because Dak is a Cowboy. It was a Bulldog.
Sure.
It's something I love about college football, and I caught myself doing that throughout the night.
I think the important caveat is like as long as you're not trying to say that like, oh, I saw it, like for any team to be like, oh, I saw this coming and I was a fan. And I'm the same way. Like I've been an Iowa fan that year. They went 10-2. I was rooting for them to get the Big Ten championship and win that. As long as you are like clear, like oh, this team, they got to 4-0, 5-0, and I just fell in love with how they got there and the way they were winning. And I was like, I'm gonna cheer for this team for the rest of the season. As long as it's like a clear like. I'm not trying to be like, because sometimes
you'll hop on a team preseason because you decide to believe from the jump, and then you can take that credit.
Yeah, that is also
you
a
are
possibility.
right.
Preseason picks, I think, are a part of that. Yes, like I picked Georgia when the SEC, and I'm cheering for Georgia this year when normally I would never cheer for Georgia.
Same with Bama here.
Yeah, exactly. But I've really enjoyed.
I do agree. You have to be honest with how it started, however that may be.
This one, they showed the support.
It started with winning.
Yeah. Well,
they showed the support to us, and so we're going to show it back.
Yeah, reciprocating.
Yeah, it still holds the lead for the most viewed video we've ever done. I think 2 of the top 10 videos have been BYU videos. So, big BYU podcast.
I do want to take, I'll take more so my victory lap when we get to the other game, but I do want to take a little bit of a victory lap in that I think I was correct, and you guys can't disagree because it was my feelings, but I was more nervous about this game and the Georgia Tech game than proposing on Saturday.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you.
Yeah, I'm not going to push back. That's all you. You got it.
I trust you to tell the truth on that, so I'm glad they came through for you. Let me just say that.
Well, I think I was also just vindicated in how kind of nerve-wracking that game ends up being.
Sure.
Closer than it feels like it should have been. A lot closer than Joel Klatt would have thought it would have been. I'm curious to see. He probably won't say anything about it when he talks about the Georgia Tech Pittsburgh game. But it was 2.5 points for a reason, Joel.
This game or the Georgia Tech game?
Both.
Did he complain about both?
He complained about both. Identical stance. What?
One was close, and the other one, the team that was favored, that you couldn't believe was only favored by that much, lost by multiple scores.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Tough.
I will also say, and we'll get into this more on our Tuesday preview show. Monday, thank you. We're doing 2 shows Monday, not Tuesday. I'll be interested to see BYU really relies on the run game here. Actually, we won't talk about this on the Monday show. I'm curious can they use that run game and translate it into a potential Texas Tech rematch? I'm just curious what this run game against Cincinnati means going forward. Do they kind of hit a stride? I think that's unlikely because I feel like most teams are not going to hit a stride week 13 and discover something about themselves.
Well, I mean, they've always been a solid running team this
Yeah,
year. LJ
yeah.
Martin's had good success, so I don't think it's necessarily like them hitting their stride. I just think he just had a good night.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just like, can they use that as to use that momentum going forward, have a dominant win against UCF, and then go into that Texas Tech game confident? Because I mean, that's kind of the reality. As a State fan, we've seen this. I think there are a lot of games we have lost, specifically against Alabama, where we could have been playing Starkville High. And if they were wearing Alabama uniforms, we would have lost.
Sure.
How much does that idea of momentum and belief and the previous performance you've put up against teams leading into a big matchup, I think that can play a part.
Well, if there's one thing I think BYU has, it's belief. So I think they'll be
Absolutely.
ready. They'll have trust that they can win that game.
They
And
might have the Lord on their side as well, potentially.
Well,
Allegedly.
debatable. It depends on who you ask. Shall we move on to another game then?
No, one more thing.
Yeah.
I know we're going to talk about it in our buy or sell, but since this would be part of the BYU video, they're going to need, well, for one, they control their own destiny still. They got to win the Big 12, and they're in. But they're going to need help to win the or to lose in the Big 12 championship and still make it.
For sure.
Because right now they sit at 11, and that with no one losing right now last weekend, they're cut off right now.
Is that 11 in last week's playoff ranking?
Last week's playoff rankings, they're going to be 11 again this week. I fully believe that unless they have the guts to move them ahead of Alabama, which would be unbelievable for them to make that kind of change after 1 week, but it's possible. They did beat a good Cincinnati team. They're going to need help once they get into the Big 12 championship game if no one above them loses this weekend. So BYU, for our fans that are watching this video, you need to cheer for Auburn. You need to cheer for Stanford. Unlikely. You need to cheer for Mr. President, Michael Van Buren and LSU. You need to cheer for Damon Williams in Washington.
Please, Damon.
You need to cheer for Rich Rod in West Virginia. You need to cheer for Georgia Tech. And then you need, of course, to still cheer for Texas or Auburn so that Georgia goes to the SEC championship. And then you need to cheer for whoever Georgia plays, so A&M in that case, to beat them by 75.
Yeah.
Because I think there's an avenue still that Georgia misses.
You didn't even mention
the playoff.
You didn't even mention the fact that we're about to unite fan bases. We have a mutual interest. You didn't even mention that.
I don't think it matters what happens on Friday for the School Up North unless they
Really?
lost by 75.
Well, I think if they lose and Lane Kiffin leaves,
Or they make some kind of argument that impacts the team, which they've done before.
Yeah.
And if they did it, would celebrate it.
Yeah.
And I will back it up.
And for clarity, this is a State podcast. It's how we started. So we're talking about uniting. Yeah, we got a cowbell there. That may be the only State thing we have on. No, I've got a poster and then this poster.
We got Dak here.
And so we're talking about uniting fan bases. We all want the same thing. BYU wants Ole Miss to fall. I think that there's a possibility that if Ole Miss loses, they fall to
well, the committee respects State as a quality team. So obviously,
I'm going to have to think the only way that happens is if they make the argument that Lane leaving impacts the team, and they lost.
And no, I'm not going to say that. I don't know. I think that
But right now, I think they're one
Where
of
are
the
they up
only.
at?
they're at 6.
yeah, I
They
just
were
don't
at
see them
6.
falling.
I could see them falling from 6 to 11. I could see 11 and 1 BYU team being over a 10 and 2 Ole Miss team.
But my issue is BYU's already ranked behind all the other 2-loss SEC teams besides Vandy. But like most of them, they're already behind. So I don't see Ole Miss falling behind them.
yeah, I don't know.
There's a chance though.
Yeah.
You should still root for it because you never know.
Yeah.
Like, there's
I
no
think-
reason not to.
Right now, assuming that they don't do the head coach thing, they are one of 3 teams that are locks that are in right now, no matter what
Only
happens.
3?
Only 3. Ohio State, A&M, and the School Up North.
How is Indiana not a lock?
If they lose to 28 as a 28.5-point favorite to Purdue,
Sure.
and then lose the Big Ten championship game resoundingly,
No.
I think there is an argument
No.
for if BYU, Utah, Miami, Vanderbilt
No.
I
finish out
personally
strong.
will be putting the lock
Let's-
status on Indiana.
No, but let's say Michigan beats Ohio State. Ohio
Yeah.
State's in. Indiana loses to Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
by double digits, and then they lose to Michigan by double digits as well.
Well, but then Michigan's in the playoffs, no?
Michigan is in the playoffs, yeah. Michigan's in the playoffs if they win the Big Ten.
And they might be ahead of
Yeah,
it.
obviously.
There's no JP.
It's a 99.9%, but I think there's a
He's
path
just
for
not
them
calling
to
it
miss
a
the
lock.
playoff.
All right.
No.
Also, Fernando Mendoza tears his ACL.
And Kurt Signetti retires.
Well, there you go.
I don't think you made the same argument about Marcel Reed, Trinidad Chambliss, and Julian Sand.
I personally would really not want to see Tyler O'Neill lead
I don't-
my
if
offense
Texas-
into the playoffs.
If Texas
but
beats A&M by 100. Or let's do 70 because 70
75 is the
If they
number
beat him
we
by
like to use.
75, Marcel Reed tears his ACL, and then they lose again in the SEC
we won't go to the
championship.
SEC championship at that point, most
Y'all
likely.
still could. You're undefeated in the SEC.
They
we
would-
would have to have because it goes to
You would have to have-
strength of opponents in the SEC. So Ole Miss would have to lose, and I think Bama would have to lose.
Correct.
Well, that's
You'd
going to
have to have
happen.
the
And
other
then the
two
SEC
upsets.
championship, your second string quarterback also tears his ACL.
Brady Hart, we ride.
I think Texas A&M's in really, regardless of what
I
happens.
agree.
But I think there's an argument for Indiana to not make it. We kind of got off task
Yeah,
there.
all this
for
to
the
say,
BYU,
BYU
video, but BYU needs to cheer for Auburn, Stanford, LSU, Washington State if you want to. Feel free. West Virginia,
torn ACLs. Don't forget those.
Purdue, or you need Georgia Tech to lose, play in the SEC championship, and then lose by 75. And I do think you need to cheer for your rival, Utah.
Against
Because that's a huge barrier of entry. If the teams below them aren't going to go above Utah, then I think you need to continue cheering for Utah because you're going to be above Utah regardless of what happens.
Yeah,
I think.
I think that's fair.